Hello and welcome. We are back with All for United. We're just saying backstage, we've gone from having no football whatsoever and to having 3 games in a day. Football is truly back. We've just seen the fastest ever goal in the Euros. Will this be the fastest ever show? I doubt it. Andrew and Dan are on, but we'll see. Let's see how we get on. We've also got a returnee, somebody we haven't seen for quite a while here on AFU, but who we're delighted to have back in Marcus. So Marcus, how are you doing, sir? Lovely to have you back with us.
I'm happy to be back, man. Just holding the internet for hold up.
Absolutely. And of course, I've already alluded to them already as being full of hot air. It is Andrew Wool. How are you doing, sir?
I'm all good. Good to be back on again.
And of course, next to him, or just above him rather, right-hand man on the left-hand side, it is Mr. Dan Field. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Looking forward to the show. It's going to be interesting discussing some of the transfers.
Indeed, it will. And that is generally where we're going to start. But obviously, we had the news about Erik ten Hag staying. And I know that Andrew and Dan have both had their say on that. But I am intrigued to find out from Marcus how he's feeling about the news of Erik ten Hag remaining at the club. So, Marcus, how are you feeling about that? Do you feel he's done enough? How happy are you?
I'm not too happy with it because personally I wanted him to go after the FA Cup final, to be honest. But I'm not upset or outraged by it, you know. What makes me upset is just the lengthy amount of time that Ineos took with the decision. I think if you were going to back a manager, just give him a 3-year contract straight after the final. You know, just back him, be confident. What you don't do is interview other managers and, you know, take your time and not make a quick decision, because I feel it's a situation where we as fans, I mean, I know some people are okay with it, but personally I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, what were you guys doing over the last 6 months? You know, if you weren't 100% sure that you want to back this guy, you know, equally, if you wanted to get rid of him and you couldn't find a suitable replacement, you know, that's kind of also a red flag for me as far as I'm concerned. So I'm just a little bit weirded out at the moment by Ineos and what they're trying to do. And I'm just taking it one step at a time, you know, just wait and see FC, as I like to say. Not too outraged, not too excited, just somewhere in the middle, trying to wait and let it all play out personally.
To be honest, I think that's exactly the right way to be. I don't think there's, you know, there was the first season, which was obviously a very good season, one that we could all see the shoots of recovery in. Last season, maybe not the most wonderful, but a nice ending. Very much in the middle, lots of injuries. So I think I quite agree with you there. Dan, you were shaking your head at me earlier as if you haven't had the opportunity to say anything about this.
I was late, so I didn't get to react.
Ah, yes, you were.
I was ice skating, remember?
This is what lateness does for you, Dan.
Yeah.
You know, perhaps I'll be on time. That'd be a thing. Well, go on then, Dan. Far be it from me to censor you. What do you reckon? You content with the news about Ten Hag?
I'm just, the only positive way I can look at it really is that he's been given the chance that Ollie never got with the backing, the length of backing he's got. Obviously, I flip-flopped all season on whether I want him to stay or go. I mean, it's just nice to see that he's going to get the chance. It'd be interesting to see whether the new contract rumours are true. But fingers crossed that the players show something next season for him and give him chance. But again, I think we're going into this. It's a perfect discussion point, to be fair. We're going into a summer here where the club actually need to do something for this manager. We've seen a lot of talk today in terms of Solskjaer wanted Declan Rice and Kieran Trippier, and he ended up with Ronaldo. And it's a little bit far away from what he's asked for. So we need to hope that Ineos have a plan and Ten Hag gets the sort of things the positions that he thinks need strengthening. So I'm in the same boat as Triple M. Marcus, just not negative, not positive, but I hope that he gets the backing this summer that he needs to be able to be positive about it next season.
All right, very good and very measured so far. Andrew, you've got nothing to say about Ten Hag, but I feel bad about the fact you haven't spoken. So is there anything you'd like to say? Perhaps you'd like to talk about somebody's hair, or you're quite content. It's just an opportunity to speak if there's something you'd like to say, Andrew, so you don't feel left out of this particular bit since our Dan's butted in.
All right, happy he's staying. I always backed the man, so I'm just saying like Mark said, yeah, Ineos taking their time, just left everybody hanging around and was like, if you're going to make a decision, make it quick so we can all move on. But so we got there in the end finally, so we can look forward to a pre-season and the season ahead and see what it may bring for us all.
Absolutely that. Well, there we go. That's the inevitable 10 hard question dealt with. And it means that we can move on to the thumbnail. And the thumbnail today, which has been slightly zhuzhed up. I hope you enjoyed it. It's slightly different from how we usually do our Saturday Night Live shows ones. And on this one, obviously, we put an Everton player on there, which is a bit weird. That's not how we've zhuzhed it up. We're not decided we're going to take Man United players up and just the other players on. But there's a reason, of course, why we've thrown an Everton player on there. And that is because, again, more news, more rumours. It's not my favourite thing to do, talking about news and rumours, as both Andrew and Dan will tell you. But this is the industry we're in, so I just have to kind of suck it and go with it and live with it. So that's where we are. But Jared Branthwaite. Now, this is part of the reason, boys, why I don't like it. Doesn't matter where you read, things aren't always true. So one lot says 35 million, another one says we offered 43 million, another outlet says we offered 50 million. Now, that is quite a gap, £15 million that you can have. So the truth is we don't really know how much has been offered because it's out there. So let's say it's somewhere in the middle, around the 40 million mark. The general gist seems to be that it's going to be rejected, which is totally understandable, I think, from Everton's point of view, because that does probably feel like it's a little bit too small of an amount considering the season that Branthwaite had last season. But it's a two-part question. Number one, is Jared Branthwaite the sort of player that we need as an answer within our current defence? And number two, if 40 million-ish is going to be rejected, what's your ceiling? If you were thinking, yes, we're going to bring Branthwaite in, whereabouts do you go? How high? Because there's Maguire at 80 million, and we all know what happened when he came in at 80. So what's the level? Whereabouts should we be? Marcus?
Yeah, it's a tough one because for such a talented young defender, his price tag is going to be quite high. In terms of what we need, I think he is the right sort of player that we need. He can play in a high line. He's somebody who's not afraid to play on the halfway line when we have the ball, and he's not afraid for that transition. And he has all the qualities you would need to play, I think, the way Ten Hag wants to play. The price tag for me is a huge issue because Manchester United have been criticized by many fans for overspending on players and going for the big name, obvious players. And this is kind of, for me, something that I can't really put into words. I can't logically explain why I feel this way. I just feel this way. Branthwaite, for me, just seems like a massive red flag because it feels so similar to the Pogba deal, feels so similar to Maguire, feels so similar to deals we've done in the past, whether it's Memphis, Sancho, right? The list goes on of players we've spent a lot of money on, whether they're young and up and coming or whether they're already proven. It's just the price tag that's the issue for me. I think about Anthony being the most recent one as well. I don't want to see Manchester United splash big money on a player. I would rather see us just go for players where I as a fan can look and be like, wow, I've never watched him. It's exciting. It's fresh. It's new. I don't want to go for somebody who's already well known personally. Again, I can't explain it logically because somebody would be like, what are you talking about? You know, Brathwaite is such a good player. I get it. He's got obvious quality, but I've been scarred so much seeing players with quality come to United for big money and just flop under the expectations. And I just think right now we're still trying to figure out what our identity as a team and as a club is. We're still trying to figure out whether or not this manager is the right one to take us forward, because even though Ineos are going to give him a new contract now, again, the delays to me suggest that there was hesitation. So they're still not 100% sure if they're going to keep this guy long term. They need to figure that out first and figure out all the backroom stuff first before we start investing on a big money player. Because the last thing we want is to spend money on a Branthwaite, and then a year from now, a season from now, we figured out, oh, actually, we don't want to go in this direction. We want to go this way now. And we end up like Chelsea, where you've got this bloated squad with so many players, and any manager who comes in can't say, I don't like him, can we please have a couple of new replacements? It's like, no, this is it. You know, this is what you have to work with because we can't sell them. Tough luck. I feel like that's the situation we're going to end up in if we jump too soon with these big signings. So yeah, 60 is the highest I would go for him. Maybe 70, but that's, 60 as a base fee with maybe 10 million add-ons. Anything more than that, I think we've got to walk away.
It's interesting. I mean, Beanie, it's just pops on here. Obviously, our TikTok superstar says reality is that the market that we're in nowadays, big money moves have skewed the market. And I mean, of course, it's definitely true. But Andrew, where do you stand on the whole Jared Branthwaite thing? Do you kind of agree with what Marcus is saying here? He's not wrong, is he? That we've had some players in that have shown flashes of brilliance at a very high price that we have, I suppose, really hoped and maybe even scraped the barrel to try and find good things that they've done to almost justify the money that we've spent on them. But it's not always the case that they've come out and performed in the manner that we needed them to. Is there a reason to be worried about this? Do we need to look for more proven players and get them in first and then try blooding in the youngsters around them?
That's how we were. I was saying the last 10 years at United, there's been players that have come in, we've overpaid, and they've never quite lived up to the hype. A few have worked out and a lot haven't. So for Branthwaite, he's a player that's had a rapid rise in the Premier League, and would you say he's the finished article yet? No, he's definitely got undoubtedly elite potential, and you say, honed his skills by gaining experience at PSV before with under our former player Ruud van Nistelrooy as well. So you return back to English football with a very diverse skill set, and you have that first team experience ready to help Everton out. And Sean Dyche there at Everton, has become very dependent on the English defender. So it's really, he's been at the spine of the Everton team, making it offensive and with high level defending too as well. So he's had a lot of responsibility this season, considering what Everton have been through this season. So he's been one of the standouts for them. I mean, okay, it's been reported we've offered them 35 million as a starting, an opening offer, but Everton aren't going to be willing to accept that. They'll demand a premium for their defender this summer. It'll be interesting to see what we do. Do we go back with an improved offer? I think the initial offer that's been reported, it's including bonuses of up to 8 million. So it means we just slapped down a 27 million offer with the bonuses on top. So, but Everton are under financial pressure themselves. They've got to comply with these sustainability and fine profit rules. And the only reason they'll look to sell a prize young prospect like Branthwaite is if that transfer bails them out of their own problems. So, but I'm just thinking, you may see if United are going to break the bank for him. I mean, look what we spent on Harry Maguire's. Was he worth the 80 million? Was it 80 million? Well, what we got for him. So I don't know. I just think with Branthwaite, he's a young defender. He can help tighten up our defence at the back and could form a good partnership with Martinez. So we want to be competing for more major trophies in the coming season, and we do need better players for that to happen. So I think definitely, as I said, he's got elite potential. So his signing could be the right step in going forward.
Yeah, again, fair points all round. Dan, you were on the pod when we spoke with Dan from Toffee Bluecast. It was an Everton preview. He came on. We were talking about the sort of players that he rated, and Branthwaite was the name. That was the one that he came up with, even back then, as being the player that was going to be standing out, I suppose, for Everton, but also the player that we would potentially be looking to try and get. And so it's evolved. That's exactly how it's turned out. We are in the market for him. That seems pretty clear. With that conversation that we had, I think for both of us, we were probably sitting there feeling a bit more like, oh, well, maybe not. The fact is, we know that Varane's gone now. We know that we can't really trust any of our left backs at this moment in time because we don't know whether or not they're going to be fit in terms of being able to make a whole season. So where do you stand on the Branthwaite deal? Is this something that you would get? What's your ceiling? How high would you go? And, as a Maguire apologist, I think that's probably the wrong word to use, but you know what I mean, as someone who will often come to the defence of Harry, could you see a Harry and Jarry partnership coming up?
For me, it's just an interesting one. I don't think we're buying him to be a starting centre-back, as crazy as it sounds, because Ten Hag's got this right foot, left foot centre-back pairing that he likes. So I think he just wants a bit of strength in depth. My ceiling for Braithwaite is 50 million max. I think that I don't want to say PR, but he's very much a media player at the minute, and he's being hyped quite high. There's better defenders than him available for cheaper across Europe if Everton are unwilling to sell. But I don't think it compares to the Maguire deal, because ultimately, if we didn't pay 80 million for Maguire, Man City would have got him, and he would have gone to Man City instead. There's not many suitors that you see are interested in Braithwaite in terms of would they actually challenge us for the signature, or are we sort of in pole position? So United need to keep that in mind, and this is where we need to get better as a club. So we need to be going. We've offered 35 million or 45 million. Ornstein said 35, so I tend to believe him normally. So we go to 50 and then add on some stuff where if he's super successful, it could go to 60 or 70. But we need to learn as a club that we've got to stop paying massive prices for players that aren't proven. And we've got to stop paying over the odds for players that are a little bit past it, but proven. So we've got to find the middle ground of it all, because it's either one or the other. We're paying far too much money for players that haven't done anything, or we're buying players that have achieved stuff, but they're over the Real Madrids of the world. So we sort of feeding off scraps there. But I would tend to think that we need to walk away if it's going past 50 million. I think we've got more control in this transfer than Everton, to be honest, because of the situation they're in, and because I don't see anybody else that's going to put up a 50 million bid to take him. But it'll be interesting to see what happens in that. We just need a defensive rebuild, as crazy as it sounds, all the way from back to front. Right to left. We're struggling. I think right back is probably the only position, and not everybody's infatuated with Dalot and Wan-Bissaka. So some people still think they need replacing, but they're probably the only two players, and obviously Martinez, but again, strength in depth, that don't need replacing. So we need at least two more centre backs and a left back. So we can't go and spend 70 million, 80 million on a lad that's just been in a relegation battle with Everton. There's just better players there in Europe that would cost 40. And I agree with Tulumba. It's British tax in a way. We pay more because he's English. So we need to be strong on this one and not overspend. This is the marker. This is literally the marker for Ineos. They say to Everton, 50 is as high as we'll go. And then if they say no, you just walk away, you leave it. Because then you're telling every other club in Europe, we're not going to get pressured anymore. There's a backup plan. If we don't get our first target, we've got a backup plan. And we're not just going to do what we did with Anthony. Well, you can have him for 40. We end up paying 80. Do you know what I mean? There's got to be something there.
I mean, I don't disagree with what you're saying in terms of the second half of what you said, but you began that with it's not the same as the City, it's not the same as the Maguire transfer, because if we hadn't bought him, City would have done. Do you think we've utilised Maguire to the level that Manchester City would have done? Do you think he would have been, because, I mean, for goodness sake, they're still playing John Stones. So do you feel like Harry Maguire would have been used in there? And if that's the case, why is it then that a team that has been fighting for that title for the last decade could have had Harry Maguire in the middle of it, but yet our fans, a good section of them, have just ridiculed him to the point of, oh God, we've got to start Maguire, as opposed to it being the Europa League final Maguire of, we're really going to miss him.
Ultimately, it's down to the fact that United are in turmoil. So we're struggling. So any player that comes to United aren't going to hit the ground running. You imagine if Haaland came to United, we wouldn't see the same Haaland as we've seen for City over the last 2 seasons. They would be. It's the same as Rodri. You could pick, arguably, I would say the best midfielder in the world, and just drop in an arm midfield, and he wouldn't fix everything. There's still more to be fixed. So this is what I mean by signing Braithwaite for 70 million and blowing all our transfer budget on one defender is not going to fix the team. You would be better off going and get 20 million players that maybe will come to fruition over the next 6 months to a year, because we'd be in better shape for next season. And I think everybody agrees we're not going to be in a title challenge next season. So you've got to start building something so we can see it as fans.
Interesting idea there. go off and buy 3 players at 20 million, because you've got to wonder who would be out there. And Marcus, let's throw that over to you, because Andy said here, if Everton play hardball, just go and get Todibo for 40 million. So I presume that's million, not pounds. That'd be quite a thing. 40 quid in a Mars bar, that'd be amazing. Is there any other players out there if we don't get Branthwaite? Dan's just spoken about have a plan B. Where would your plan B be? It's not
I
B
think
tonight.
someone like
Go on, sorry, go on, go for it.
Yeah. I was just going to say, if we are going to spend big money on a young player, whether it's 40, 50, or even 60 mil pounds, obviously if you're shopping in Europe, it'd be euros. I think there's a player who plays for Lille, Lenny Euro. I quite like the look of him. I was doing a lot of research on him. Obviously, I don't watch the French league, but I was just reading a lot of scout reports about him, looking at some of his highlights. He seems like somebody who has a lot of potential. Antonio Silva from Benfica as well. He's someone that I think should be much lower on the list of backup options, because in terms of quality, he's not quite there. But he is one of the more exciting young players in Europe. I think those are the two that would be picks. Todibo, I don't know much about him. I know a lot of Man United fans like the look of him, but I haven't looked into him at all. And I don't really watch a lot of European football on the continent, to be completely honest. I watch mainly the La Liga and the Premier League and the Champions League, and that's pretty much it. So I don't know a lot about Todibo to go off of whether or not I think he's a good backup to Branthwaite. But I do think that it's one of those things that you often get reminded as a fan that, people always say, who would you sign as a player to a backup as this player, or who would you sign to as a backup to this position? And people try to use that to try catch you out, because we see these arguments with other positions in our team. Like, for example, when you talk about the right back position, people are always like, well, who would you sign in the world that would be better than Dello, that would be better than Wan-Bissaka? And I'm always like, I may not have the answer right now, but trust me, Manchester United's recruitment and scouts probably have a list of players that we should be able to get. That's their job. That's what they get paid to do on a weekly basis. And so for me, I think there definitely should be a lot of quality out there. I refuse to believe that Braithwaite is the only good centre back at that age. I feel like we should look elsewhere. I agree with everything that's been said on the show so far. If we do start to go past that 50 million threshold, it becomes a little bit dicey, man. And the same applies for Todibo. Again, I've seen a lot of people talk about him, but I'm not too sure we should be spending any big money on a young centre back.
I think I generally tend to agree there. And that Beanie saying, I think the flip of it is, if Ten Hag said I want Branthwaite, then is it a good sign if Ineos pay what's needed for him? I mean, maybe so. We'll throw that over to Andy Wall, that is, in just a second. As well as could probably get Todibo and Euro for the price of Braithwaite, and maybe Oreo as well. Although you can get those from Sainsbury's. I think Oreo too much; they're quite cheap, so that would be pretty good. So yeah, Andrew, for you on this one, is that part of it? If Ten Hag has earmarked Braithwaite and said, you know what, this is a guy that we need to have. He's integral to my. Bearing in mind that some would argue he's had that same conversation about Anthony as well. This person's integral. And then you look at how integral Anthony's been for the last 12 months and realise that, not that integral. Is that, though, what we need to do? You've got to back your manager if you're going to say we're keeping hold of him for now, for this year. Is that a good sign? Is that something we should do? And popping on from what Marcus has just said as well, absolutely right, that it's the job of the scouting department and the transfer department to have had a list. But we know from previous managers, just listening to the Ole Gunnar Solskjaer interview, that there's too many people that held a veto. So if three of you, it's almost like NATO, if three of you want to go and invade a country and one of you says no, well, then that's it, you can't do it. And so all the others are like, well, we really wanted to do that, but we can't because they've just said so. And it's the same with the transfers, which always felt a little bit mad. So, do you think that enough time has elapsed between Ineos taking over for that to have changed sufficiently well enough for us to identify other players and be able to get them in without it causing an internal war of some sort?
Always think when United get reporters will be going in for players, it's always like the United tax. It's like clubs like, oh, we'll add a bit more on, but Sir Jim said when he first came, we're going to walk to the right solution, not run to the wrong solution. We can't keep, chucking money at the wall and hoping it's going to stick all the time. And I just remember what Newcastle did, getting Anthony Gordon from Everton. they held firm on their price and went, you either take it or leave it, and Everton ended up taking it. They just called Everton's bluff and went, yeah, and then Everton just, backed down. So we've sort of got to be a bit more ruthless and just like, whether we come back with an improvement offer or just say, or whether we come back with several offers, just say, well, at some point, this is where we're sticking. You either take it or leave it, and if you don't want to take it, we'll move on. And mention, the defender Yara as well, as we've been linked with, like, I think it was in the last few days as well. There's like Bremer of Juventus, De Ligt as well, and who's been coached by Ten Hag as well. I'm just thinking, is Ten Hag want to reunite with one of his other former players as well? But I think with Yara looks the more exciting prospect as well. And he's been compared as many as like a young Rafael Varane as well. So securing his signature would be a good coup for United. But it seems like Real Madrid are the favourites to snap his signature up. But it would a bit like years ago when Real Madrid would after Varane and convinced him to go there instead of to us. And when we missed out Varane, those years ago, we ended up going for a certain Phil Jones. So Varane did become a United player in the end, but Varane came at a time where I was going to say the twilight of his career. So it's just like, and I feel like United don't want to be missing out again on certain players, potential players, because Yara seems like a generational talent. What he did last season with in the Lille defence, I think it was like the third best defensive record in Ligue 1, so 34 goals conceded. So, but yeah, like the players we're going in for, just say we've got to hold firm on the prices we're going for. Yes, clubs are going to try and eat more out of us, but just got to be more firm and say take it or leave it. We'll move on. There's going to be plenty of players that want to come and play for the badge that is Manchester United. So we'll see if Branthwaite is the one they really, really want.
Yeah, I would also say, just to follow on that, I think another big problem is, besides obviously standing firm and not overpaying for players, is also just learning to trust our recruitment. I don't know who was responsible for some of the big signings, because obviously there was a lot of reports that it was Ed Woodward. He's since gone, and even under Mjota we've made some questionable signings. But whoever's in charge of having the final say on what type of players we sign, that person ultimately has to have a long-term vision of what they want Manchester United to look like long-term, so that we don't have a situation like over the last decade where under every different manager we're signing completely different profiles. Because one thing I have noticed about Erik ten Hag, and maybe somebody can explain it to me, but I still haven't figured it out, is it just seems like the profiles he's signed don't complement each other. Like, he signed Onana and Martinez, who were clearly there to help us play out from the back. But then you look in the midfield and the profiles he's gone for, and also the people that he starts in midfield and attack, it doesn't align. He starts a lot of players who are very direct and don't really suit the playing out from the back possession-based style. And it just seems all very confusing for me. So one thing that I think Manchester United need to move away from is making decisions based on the here and now. We need to look long-term and think about, okay, does this player suit the way we want to play going forward? And if we should maybe get rid of Ten Hag, just hypothetically, and will the next manager who inherits the squad be happy to continue? And you need to think about those things. And I think with the introduction of Wilcox, Barada, and Ashworth, I think there will be a bit more of that at Manchester United, or at least I hope we will see more of that at Manchester United, where yes, some managers are going to get pissed off. Some managers are going to come and they're going to be like, man, this isn't what I signed up for. This is not the team I want. We're going to have to be able to say as a club, well, tough. You either work with it or you leave. We'll replace you, with someone else who's willing to work with the tools that they're given. That's the direction we've got to go in now. And these managers who fall out to top clubs, a lot of them aren't getting the big jobs anymore. There's so many examples of managers who've fallen out with boards who are from that era where managers had a lot of control and a lot of say over transfers, who are now fading out of the game. And we're starting to see these young up-and-coming managers come to a team and just work with what they've got. So I think that's the new direction we've got to go in. I think of someone like Unai Emery, just off topic. He went to Villarreal, didn't really get to sign much players, won the Europa League. He's now at Villa. A lot of the squad that he has at Villa, he inherited. He just had to come in and do a job. that was clearly a very intentional appointment, because they saw a coach with a particular style of play. They saw that they had certain players, and they were like, boom, match made in heaven. That's what Man United need to do. We need to build a squad, lay the foundation, and then just bring another manager in who can come in and take over. Or obviously, in a great world, just keep Ten Hag, and he's that guy. So I think that's the big thing for me when it comes to this whole transfer conversation. We need to move away. And if Branthwaite is somebody that Ten Hag is eyeing, and the club need to be able to look at it and say, you know what, Ten Hag, we're not going to listen to you on this one. We're going to go look for another centre back in Europe, and just get into the habit of doing that.
It's an incredibly interesting point you raised there, and it's one of those that either way isn't going to be sorted just over this transfer window. It's clearly going to take 2, 3, maybe 4 transfer windows before you get to a point where you're looking at that sort of side. So it could be a 2-year plan. But Dan, you look at what it is that Marcus has just said there. He's quite right in a lot of that. If Ten Hag was to leave, when you're having the interview with the manager, this is the style of play. This is what we're expecting you to do. These are the players that you've got available. What can you do with them? And then it's about impressing based on what you've already got, rather than, well, here it is, how are you going to fix that sort of thing? So I do kind of get there where Marcus is going with that. But equally, I am unfortunately going to have to bring up my banner, because I am one of those who believes in the totality of the manager, insofar as it's the manager that gets the sack. So if I'm getting the sack, I want it to be for a decision that I've made. I worked in the scouts for a long time, and I always used to say to my assistants, look, I'll listen to everything you've got to say, always. But when it comes to the final decision, I'll make it, because ultimately, if it goes wrong, it's going to be me that gets it in the neck. It won't be, well, he said we could do that. Well, yeah, but you're the leader, so, kind of your job. And I kind of feel that that's the way it should be. It's almost like the manager's vote should count double, because ultimately it's their job on the line. Omar Barada, when he comes in, or Jason Wilcox while he's here, or Dan Ashworth, if he ever comes out of the garden, will effectively never lose their job based on the performances on the pitch. That will always be Erik Ten Hag. So, Dan, where do you stand on that? Because the answer's surely got to be somewhere in the middle. Because I would be absolutely just so annoyed if I was Ten Hag and I said I want that player or that player, and they're the only two. I'm not interested in any of these other ones. If we can't get me those, we need to look at something else or another part of the pitch. They just went, well, actually, ta-da! Which is, I suppose, in a way, kind of what happened with Ronaldo. No matter what Ollie says, I don't believe he stood there and went, I'll tell you what I want. I want a 35-year-old bloke who's getting ready for a Zimmer frame. No, I don't think that's what happened. So where do you stand at, Dan?
Somewhere in the middle, because the problem starts with the players for me. You've got to be in a position where you've got the right players around the squad. So a lot of what you see, so I personally don't think Liverpool will have much of an issue transition into slots kind of football, because they've got the right kind of players in the dressing room. And that was our biggest mistake at the football club at the start. We tried to get rid of too many professionals that we could have integrated youth with to build that mentality. So the mentality's gone. So as it stands now, I think most people would say that 90% of the squad should be up for sale, because they've not done it in the last 3 or 4 seasons. I know we've won 2 trophies in 2 years, which is really good for most teams, but it's Man United, so we want to be in the Champions League. We want to be pushing for the title. We want to be playing better football on the pitch. So it's just got to be somewhere in the middle. Like you say, if Ten Hag wants a player, then he should have the right to say, look, I feel he'll bring the type of player I want to play the type of football I want. But they've got to be pulling in the same direction. And this is why the delay is a little bit of a concern. So have they sat down with Ten Hag and said, you know what, maybe we've not aligned in vision. So we'll see whether, if you believe the rumours they've interviewed other people, we'll try this coach. But it sounds like they've gone to all these coaches and nobody aligns with the vision. So they've just sort of said, Ten Hag's actually give the best interview, let's say. So it looks like he'll be best taking us forward. But there's got to be a compromise in that. It can't be a dictatorship. They can't just go, this is a player you're having, make it work. There's got to be some dialogue like, do you know what? we can get you this player, but if we get you this player, we can't get you the top target in midfield, so we'd have to go to the third one down. This is the guy we recommend. Same kind of player. We've done some background checks. He fits the bill. So, yeah, we'll get you top target centre-back, but you're going to have to compromise on a midfielder that's of similar stature to the one you wanted, just maybe not as high of a name. But ultimately, we've got to really put the cat amongst the pigeons in the dressing room, to be honest. You've got every player needs to feel like the position's up. So if they're not playing well, they're not going to be in the team. So it starts with mentality first and then getting it right with what we bring in. It's really not a difficult fix. If you can make maybe 3 signings that work straight away, then suddenly we'll all be on cloud 9 saying that we're back. Do you know what I mean? We've just got to get this right. Ineos have got to show us something this summer. They really have.
It's very true. And I think, I don't know, maybe the answer is almost that instead of it being that Ten Hag always gets the players that he wants, maybe he's got a veto on the ones that he doesn't. So if the board come up to him and say, we can't get any of those, but we could get you this one, he has the option to go no or yes. And then that way it's not being done to him, because I think that was part of what was going wrong at Chelsea for a while, was that they just had players that were bought by the board and the manager just expected to just come in and make these guys work without really having any say on it. So, yeah, that's kind of where we are. Marcus, we're going to come back to you. Interesting. What's Beanie saying here? From what I've seen, they're going to list of 3 and he'll choose which one. And if that's the case, so be it. That's fair. As long as he gets a chance to choose, I think that's all that really matters. But what I was going to ask you, Marcus, was looking at the positions on the pitch at the moment and where we currently stand. Where would you say are the most pressing ones? So if we could only make 2 signings this transfer window, because that's all the budget allows, maybe 3 at a push, where would those positions be? Where would you be looking to improve?
Okay, well, the first one is a dead giveaway, centre-back. I think most people in the fan base would agree with that. And then the second position for me, I know that fullback is a pressing position. I get it. But personally, I still think the midfield is a bit of a problem, dependent on whether or not we sell Casemiro and don't bring Amrabat back from his loan, which I imagine we won't. I mean, continue make his loan deal permanent, is what I meant to say. I think the midfield is a very pressing position, because even though we've got Mainu, there's a lot of excitement around him, and I absolutely love Bruno Fernandes, I still feel like there is a lack of balance in that midfield. And I again, going back to that conversation about managers having power of transfers, I look at that midfield and it just seems so disjointed now with Mason Mount. I cannot, for the life of me, understand 12 months later why we signed him, because I'm looking at that midfield and I'm thinking, okay, so hypothetically, Amrabat goes back to Fiorentina, we get rid of Casemiro, we've still got to find a way to fit Mason Mount in there and then still sign a defensive midfielder. I think that's the area that, the recruitment is going to be looking at the most personally. I genuinely and utterly believe it's very pressing. Yes, Luke Shaw's been injured all season and we don't know what's really happened with Malacia. So if somebody wants to argue the fullback position, I won't, fair play. I can't really give you a logical counter argument. I just think the midfield is equally as important. And I don't know, another point that I want to actually bring is, even though mine has been sensational, he's still only 19 years old. At the end of the day, I don't want to see another young player get run into the ground. I would love us to sign a more experienced older statesman who, at the very least, can push him for the position. And if Mainu does start anyways, because he's just that good, then at least he's got somebody who he can learn from and somebody who he can pick up certain things from. It can't hurt to sign a more experienced player to play alongside Mainu, whether it's in the deeper role with him or whether it's somebody who's going to play in a similar position to him, just so he can not be running to the ground and have a rest. So it's definitely midfield for me.
Very fair points. One and all there. Beanie saying he would go for replacements for Ran and Casemiro. Jarvis, just to respond to what you put there, I don't know necessarily that what he was saying was contradictory. I think it's still reasonable. There may have been players in the youth that might have been able to do it. Listen, there's a section of the fan base. Sorry, go for it. Defend yourself if you want.
I was just going to say, no, I think it's fair to call me out on that point. But here's the thing. When there are players who are available who I think suits Erik ten Hag's style, he doesn't pick them. A good example of this is Amad Diallo. I think Amad Diallo suits the way Erik ten Hag wants to play more than Garnacho or Rashford. Now, again, I'm willing to concede that I'm wrong because I don't fully understand what Erik ten Hag is trying to do, and that's part of the reason why I don't believe in him as a manager, is because I don't see what I'm believing in. I cannot get behind something that I don't understand. It just doesn't make any sense. I'd be lying through the camera if I said, wow, I think this guy's great, I think he's the right manager, when I can't even articulate why I think he's the right manager. And that's the issue. So maybe the problem is me. Maybe I'm not understanding. I don't think that's necessarily just about injuries. I think when all his best players have been available, he tends to select the Rashfords, the Brunos, the Garnachos, which fair play to him if he thinks those players are are good enough to play for him. But it's like, what are you trying to do then? Because they just don't mesh well with Martinez, Onana, some of the other signings he's made. Amrabat was available for most of the season. He didn't really start that many games as well. And a lot of people aren't picking up on this. Like, Amrabat has been available for most of the season. He hasn't started that often. Granted, he wasn't playing that well at the beginning of the season, but that's your signing. So all the more reason for me to give you a bit of an eyebrow as a fan. If your signing, your guy, is not starting. Anthony's another one. He's been available for most of the season, but there was a period where he just wasn't starting games. You spent 80 million on this guy. One thing I cannot fault Ollie for is that Ollie stood by Maguire, because that was his guy. He said, I'm going to die by this guy because I spent 80 million and I'm going to prove to you why I spent 80 million. That's what I want to see from a manager, because at least it shows integrity, and it shows that you are actually dying on your sword. When a manager signs someone for big money and then takes them out of the team and doesn't start them, it's a huge red flag for me. So there's a few signings that Ten Hag has made, and again, I know injuries have played a part, but there's been periods in this season where we haven't had injuries and he's dropped certain players, and I'm just thinking, like, what could possibly be the explanation there? That's where my reservations comes from with the profile of players with Ten Hag. The Mount signing is a good example. Even if Mount had been starting every week, I'd still be asking myself, yeah, but why Mason Mount? He's like the opposite of a possession-based player. He's very physical. If we're playing this pressing style and we want to be a high pressing team and we want to go for turnovers and we want to be very direct in possession, then I get it. Then that makes sense. That makes perfect sense. Then I look at the Anthony signing and I'm like, why not sign a more direct winger who can take people on? If you like Garnacho and Rashford so much, why not go for someone similar? What was the point of the Anthony signing? You know what I mean? Like, it just so much of it just doesn't make any sense.
I made a similar point this season, actually, and got a few eyebrows raised at me. I didn't understand the Højlund signing when you've got wingers like Garnacho and Rashford that don't cross the ball or put the ball into the box. It made it, and it's contradictory because Højlund's a really good player, but he doesn't fit the system of the players we're playing. So this is something we've seen for season after season. The ball not really coming in, the players cutting in to shoot. So I was sort of sat there going, why did we sign Højlund? Because he's not that sort of player. So I understand where you're coming from in that aspect, but I can see why people raise an eyebrow as well. Because you're not saying that I'm not saying Højlund's a bad player, and I'm not saying Rashford's a bad player or Garnacho's a bad player. Just as a unit, it's not what you would expect to pick if you was trying to play that kind of football. I would start Ahmad and put Bruno as the 9 and that sort of thing. So I do understand his point of view on that.
Stopped very suddenly there. I wasn't sure that was going to happen. I've muted myself. So back in there nice and quick. There we are. Listen, this is what I love about it. All Man United fans, we don't all have to agree. But what I love about it, we can disagree nicely. Marcus is, if there's a scale, which there clearly is, Marcus is clearly on this side of like, do you know what? I'll give him the benefit of the doubt and see where we are. Some of us, like Jarvis, clearly over this side, like, do you know what? No, he can do no wrong at the minute. He's fine. And we'll see. We'll see where it goes. I think the thing is we're all somewhere in the middle, just not quite sure. So if you're Dan, you're wobbling. Some days you're here, some days you're here. It's a tricky thing. And let's be honest, until the season begins next season, none of us are really going to know quite how we're feeling. But I think the optimistic ones of us are definitely sitting there and hoping that we can say, well, it was the injuries. And that's, I'm sure, what all of us as Man United fans would want, because who wouldn't want a successful season next season? So there we go. Andrew, we started this all with the 2 positions that you would absolutely, definitely improve. And then the one that if there was a little bit of money left in the tank that you might then go to if you could, what would they be for you?
Probably, well, the two most important, probably the central defender and a midfielder. I was thinking midfield last season was like times like gaping holes all through it. Opposition teams just counter us with ease, with their counter attacks, and it was just like, it was almost like about the players, and we were thinking what we've done to deserve this kind of punishment. But Ten Hag, he needs to, fix this, current setup to improve our league form, and with the European football next season, that's you're gonna have to have different, in terms of control and tactics on that as well. So the league, Premier League, and Europe are completely different. So, I mean, Ten Hag, I think yes, he's got to adapt as a coach, or he's going to risk, wasting the chance. Ineos have said, yeah, we're going to go forward with you. Risk. He's going to risking this chance, and could go the way of Ollie and Mourinho when they got sacked after a poor first half of a season. So there definitely needs a new midfield dynamic. It's going to help Manu as well and allow him to blossom. A more physical presence that protects the defence, but is imposing on the opponents as well, and that should be a key target in the recruitment as well. But also just need to keep players fit next season and play in a way that suits both Ten Hag and Ineos going forward as well. So yes, last season it was bad for injuries, and it was a valid excuse, and other excuses Ten Hag was making. But if that was to happen again next season, I don't think it's going to wash for a second time, because like, as a coach, you have to adapt. You have to plan. Yes, sometimes plans go AWOL, or players miss game, lose form, but that's part of games. We need better flexibility in terms of this, and signing players that will offer that flexibility as well. So definitely midfield, defensively, well, we will mention Branthwaite and other defenders, and the other position is a striker. We need somebody to help out Hoyland, because we can't put it on all his shoulders as well. So those would be the three key areas. But it's how much money we've got to spend, and being reported. So it's going to require a few player sales as well. But we'll see what deals we can do as well. So as I said earlier, we've got to offer the right price for the players, but not overspend as well. So we can't be, just chucking money up at the wall, as saying, and hoping for the best.
No, absolutely. And I love this. That's what I love about the community. There we go. That was very nicely put there, Jarvis, as well. Dan, over to you. Your 2+1. What would it be?
It's going to be mental, because I'm not going to say left back, and I don't know how, because we haven't had a left back all season.
Yeah.
But I'd go centre back, centre midfield, or CDM and striker if we had any money left over. I just think the spine of the team's missing a little bit, and we've seen it this season. So ultimately, that's what you've got to replace. The one thing I will say in defence of Ten Hag, in the terms of, if that's what United do, if they go and sign a centre back, centre midfielder, and a striker on a budget, then nobody in their right mind can think that we're going to challenge for a title next season, because it's not enough. They need to be backing him, and in a ruthless way. So even though Maguire and McTominay, in my opinion, sort of saved us last season in terms of they kept us ticking over when other players weren't performing. McTominay won us 12 points. They should have been sold for him last summer, so he could have got 2 more replacements that he wanted. So if he still doesn't want those players this season, the club need to make sure they moved on efficiently. So any player that he sort of says, look, they're just not for me, whether we agree or not, it needs to happen. I think me and Jarvis had the discussion about Fernandes. I personally would never sell Fernandes. But if Ten Hag goes and says, look, if we can take the 100 million for him from wherever and get 2 players that are going to thingy, that's what Ten Hag wants, you've got to back him. I would think he was absolutely mental for doing it. But that's the position. You've sort of got to put all the power to the manager as well as above the players now. You've got to shift that player power away from the club, in terms of no player thinks they're safe unless they're performing. And that's where the club need to go for the future, and they need to get there relatively quickly. I will say on the centre-back thing, I would prefer to play Kamwala for 30 games next season than go and spend 70 million on Braithwaite. I know he's had a really good season last season for Everton. He looks like a promising player with his left foot or whatever, but Is he that much better than Camboirla that we've seen? Because Camboirla's looked really good. So why not take a risk on a youth player and not spend the 70 million and use it somewhere else if need be? It's those sort of risks, calculated risks they've got to start taking at the club instead of 100 million down. We've got a quality player, doesn't work out. They're on 450k a week. They're never being sold. They're going to leave on a free. It just doesn't work anymore.
So what I'm hearing there is you want to play Willie.
I'm going to stay
There he is
professional today.
Well done. Can't believe you ended up clipping that and posting it on your TikTok. That's outrageous.
It was amazing. I can't believe. Oh, it's gone. Absolutely gone.
Unbelievable. But you know what, Dan? I think we agree. I would go with a centre back, a centre mid, and if the money's there, maybe not a striker, but certainly somebody within that attacking three, considering Martial's gone as well. Rashford sort of depends on how he's feeling at the start of next season. Hopefully he's going to come back with a bang and that'll be like getting a new player. But of course, if he doesn't, we can't just be relying just on Højlund. So I think it's a tricky one there. But I'm with you. And I'm still sitting there going, but we really do need to worry about that left-back spot. But this is, I suppose why loans exist. So there we go. Who's this here? Aiga wants to know something about Jojo Naves from Benfica.
It's like £100 million midfielder. I can't see us paying that much for anybody this summer, to be honest.
Okay, there we go. That's something you need to know. And it was very succinct as well. Well done, Dan. Well, Andy also likes to play with Camboirla too, as we well know. It's well documented. We're going to do an open floor for this one rather than going around. Because, Dan, you just mentioned playing Camboirla. And he's somebody who's been in the team. So I'm not asking for those. I'm not looking at a Camboirla, a Mainu, a Garnacho. Not interested in any of those. What I'm interested in from you guys are any other youth prospects who you think have been sort of on the edge, on the cusp, who potentially we could see getting a debut next season, maybe in the Carabao Cup or something like that.
I've got one straight away if you want me to go first. I think that Collier could be a good shout for a debut next season. He's treated him very much like he treated Mainu after finals, talking to him. He's been around the team a lot. He's a midfielder, so I think that he could be in with a shout. And then if any of you two want to jump in with some other players, there's also Shea Lacey that looks promising, and then obviously Harry Amas as well. So they're three that I would keep an eye on for next season for sure. I definitely think one of them will get a... I'm not saying they'll break through Garnacho style, but they might get a few appearances.
I'm going to be honest and say I'm going to put my hands up and say I don't really pay too much attention to the academy, so this one is above my pay grade. It's a bit difficult for me to answer, to be honest. I'd be lying if I gave an answer, and I don't want to do that.
Fair play. Andrew, anyone for you that sort of stands out that's been on the cusp? Or is Dan more?
Well, Dan mentioned Harry Amas as well. He's just like, cause he was on the bench for the 2-2 draw against Liverpool, and so that was probably aided by Luke Shaw and Malassi not being fit at all this season. So, but he's definitely very tap-minded. He was part of the Watford senior set up at 15. Was interested from Chelsea before we got him to United as well. Another player I'm thinking of is Habib Gunai as well. I think he could be one to. I know he's been, because he's a right back, so left back and right back. So filling those two positions, say our defensive crisis has opened up the doors for the younger players, and you say. So it'll be interesting to see who actually breaks through next season as well. So I'm going to try and get to more of the, like they said, youth player game, the under 21s and all those games. Try and get a few more next season. So I managed to do one last season when we played Norwich, and the kids they were doing all right, and I thought a few of these could give the first team players a run for their money. So also it's the first team. Watch out, the kids are coming for you.
Fair play. I think I would tend to agree there. And Andy, I presume you either mean Dan or you're talking to Beanie, or maybe even Andy Wall. But he changed his mind about Bruno. When he played against Crystal Palace, he realised how much we depended on him, And if we play with two holding midfielders, Bruno will thrive. I just think getting rid of Bruno Fernandes would be a bit like getting rid of the engine out of your car and then still expecting to get to work the next day. But that's just me, and it's all opinions. And speaking of opinions, we've almost reached that point in the show where we are going to run through our very own all-time Manchester United five-a-side team. We're going to construct our own individuals five-a-side team that we think would just absolutely boss it. At the risk of using this far too often, I can remember back when Sky Sports used to have the Soccer Sevens, and it was the Legends, and they used to play in an indoor hall. It was great fun sitting there watching some of the old players playing on that indoor hall. So we're kind of looking for that type of thing today. But just before we do, quick look back over the start of the Euros. Obviously, it's happened. There's been lots happening today. Good old Matteo Darmian's side are still 2-1 up against Albania, about 20 minutes to go there. But Scott McTominay, we've got to kind of have a little chat about our opening game for him. It must have been hard to have been stuck there. I think Germany put themselves right up there in with almost like the favourites tag, which is partially why I chose them. I was quite, in a way, smug, if I'm honest with you. I came away from the end of that going, I told you Germany would do well. Meanwhile, somebody else on the panel, who shall remain nameless, chose the team that lost 3-1 to Switzerland to top that particular group. Who would do such a thing? Scott McTominay in the game there, Marcus. Did you catch any of it? And what do you reckon about the opening 2 days of the Euros? Have you been captivated by it, or have you found it boring?
No, I think the games have been really good. I think the most boring game was actually the Spain game earlier this afternoon, only because the game was over in the first half. The Scotland game was crazy because, listen, I expected Germany to win, but winning 5-1, having your entire front three score on the opening game of the tournament is crazy, regardless of who you're playing against. And Scotland, they just struggled. They did not see the ball for at least the first hour of the game, and it just seemed like they were giving Kroos way too much space, and they were allowing Germany to just bop the ball about and really dictate the tempo. And as far as Scott McTominay is concerned, I thought he kind of let his team down because he just went missing. This is a player who obviously we all have a bit of a go at when it comes to the United fan base. I think he's a very limited player, but I think with the way he's played for United this season, I would have expected him to turn up, and he was nowhere to be seen. Him and McGinn were just struggling in that midfield. So yeah, they got completely dominated, and I don't think I've seen anything like that in an opening game of a tournament by the host nation to just win that emphatically. It's amazing, man. Nagelsmann has got that German team playing football. Again, it is just Scotland, but still, you've got to beat them. 5-1 is still impressive.
Right, absolutely. I thought you did really well. You could say the Germans were on cruise control, couldn't you, Andrew? They were absolutely on fire in that game.
Yeah, I thought, in the beginning of the match, I thought Scotland have just got to ride out this storm and then settle down into the game. Somebody said to me, Germany score within the first 10 minutes. I think it's, Scotland ain't going to come back. And I was like, literally on the 10th minute, the Germans scored. It was like, and I said afterwards, they score another, it's just going to be a bit of an open season. Germany was just in full throttle. And you just thought after the last tournament where they exited the group stage, they wanted to, give something back, and just they did it in emphatic style, didn't they? So just like all the goals were just like well worked, and just all the other teams are going to be looking to see how they do in the next two games. I don't think no one's going to be wanting to face Germany after that opening day victory. But yeah, for McTominay, it just wasn't his night, and North Scotland's. Okay, they did score. That was their only highlight, but I'm sure they're all having a drink or two, before and after the games. But for Scotland, it's the next two games that are the most important to see if they can, potentially get out of the group. I think I did say Scotland to come second, so hopefully, they do. But it's going to be a tough task after
Stop my notes, Andrew. Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
So a bit of a. As I said, I've just got to move on from that defeat. It's just like I think Andy Roberts said, look, get back on the training pitch, work on things and just go for it in the next two games and see what happens for them.
No, absolutely. And Dan, I think, we've said pretty much all there is to say about the Germany game. We know how impressive they were. So I'm going to ask you a question I think right in your wheelhouse, which is, why did it take until the English officials were in charge for VAR to look like it was absolutely atrocious again? Because it was really good for the first 3 games, and then we watched that and you're like, oh my God, what's going on here?
I don't know. I just don't know anymore. We've just got the worst officials in world football. There's no other choice. Like the penalty in particular, that I still don't know whether it was even a penalty. Like I've not seen any angle that shows definite contact. It looks like he kicks the floor, but it looks like there's a little bit of contact before he kicks the floor. But it's 100% a red card. Like if he's give the penalty, it has to be a red card because he's in essence just tripped him. And the double jeopardy rule doesn't come in unless it's a genuine attempt to play the ball. So I just don't understand how they've got to that situation in the first place. And then just in general play, I thought they were awful in terms of letting the game flow, bringing it back for silly things. Like I've seen some of the games and you've not seen that in any of the other games. As soon as Michael Oliver's in charge, there's an issue. But I mean, it sums it up. To be fair, we have got the worst officials around.
I think it's that way. But it's interesting because you mentioned the double jeopardy thing. Obviously, in the Scotland game, there was a red card. And I mean, it was a penalty, absolutely. But I would argue he was definitely going for the ball. You know, I don't think at any point he sat there and gone, oh, I'll take out your ankles, you wee bugger. There was none of that. He was definitely going for the ball. But why then was his a red card if he's definitely going for the ball? And like you say, this one.
I think, to be fair, I think his was a red card because of the nature of the challenge. I thought it was an absolute awful tackle to make. There was no need to going that high and that aggressive. And then he brings in his second foot. So that was probably for violent conduct. But I've been reading after the Spain game that Rodri was booked for waving an imaginary yellow card. So if that's the case, he wasn't even booked for tripping the player up. He was booked for, in essence, dissent. So Michael Oliver thinks that tripping a guy up that's just about to put the ball in the net. I mean, again, I actually don't know whether it's a penalty or not. Like, I've still not seen it properly to say it is or isn't.
I'm not convinced it is. He kicks the floor.
Yeah, but this is what I mean. So I get it. If you don't give it, I would probably go, you know what? It didn't look like a penalty. That's fine. But when he's saying that Rodri has tripped him without playing the ball, but then hasn't sent him off, and then he's booked him for something that's not to do with the actual foul itself anyway. Honestly.
Wasn't Michael Oliver the one who sent off Dallo?
Yes.
There we go. So you're always going to get booked if you say something and do something that's annoying to Michael Oliver because he's more important. But there we go. Right, let's move on because the Euros are nearly over for the day. Just under 15 minutes ago. Italy's still 2-1 up against Albania. But here we go. It's the five-a-side. It's the bit I've been looking forward to the most. I don't care what sort of formation you tend to go for. But obviously you must have a goalkeeper. So we're a goalkeeper and 4 outfield players. Some people might go defensive and go 2 defenders, 1 midfielder, 1 striker. Sensible people might go for 1 defender, 2 midfielders and a striker. Crazy people might just put 4 really good, skillful players on the ball and not be fussed how many goals they concede because they'll be thinking they're going to score loads more. Who knows? But we'll kick off by just finding out who your goalkeeper would be. And I'm happy to start because my answer is the greatest goalkeeper of all time, Mr. Peter Schmeichel. I'm very intrigued to see where you guys are going to go with this. So, Marcus, you can kick us off.
Okay, well, this five-a-side challenge is going to expose my age. So I'm mainly going to go for players that I've actually watched and not players that, I've heard great things about from all the United fans. I'll start with my pick would be Van der Sar.
You've gone Van der Sar. Would you believe it? Controversy at the start. Andrew Wall.
Oh, got to go for I'm not sure like Van der Sar and De Gea, but for me it's the Great Dane, Peter Schmeichel. I have to. He was the one I grew up watching, so yeah, the big Great Dane.
Now, I've got to be honest, Marcus. Of all of the people here today that I've been looking forward to hearing from, it's Dan, because he often comes out with the ones that makes me scratch my head the most. So here we go. And there is one player who is definitely appearing in this five-a-side team that I can name. In fact, I'm going to write it down now because I already know they're going to be in there. But before that, your goalkeeper, Dan, who's it going to be whilst I just write David Beckham?
I tell you what, I'm going to shock you lots of times tonight, I think. So
We'll
I'm
see.
going to go for the best ever shot stopper I've seen on the basis that he's a good shot stopper and it's five-a-side. So I'm sort of mixing the lines a little bit. But I'm going to go for David De Gea.
Unbelievable.
Which, with the criticism I've given him all last season, is mad, I know. But in terms of if someone's taking a shot at the goal, that's the player that I'm going to want in there. I know he's going to save it.
This is scandalous. This is unreal. And I thought mine was bad.
I like Van der Sar. Got a lot of love for Van der Sar. Great player. A lot of love indeed. And I care deeply for David De Gea. But the thought that he's better than Van der Sar, I'm just going to leave that one there. Jarvis agrees on Schmeichel, but I must say Tim Howard is underrated. And he is, I always thought he did well, to be fair, Tim Howard, when he played. But again, there's a lot of elitism that goes into these decisions and even into you, Richo. Lovely to see you here today. Right, so from now on, you can pick one player and just name them, and I will randomly put them based on where they used to play on that pitch. Obviously, you can have a right back, and that'll just be a defender. I'm not expecting to be out on the right-hand side. We're not going that deep. So, Marcus, who would be your next player?
It's got to be Rio Ferdinand.
It's gone Ferdinand. Reasoning?
I just think he's the right sort of defender you'd want in a five-a-side team. Somebody who's really good at reading the game, but also has, just all the basic attributes you need in a defender. He's also somebody who'd be pretty quick in his prime. So as a defender. So yeah, reminds me, Varane, for those of you who don't know, is like one of my favorite defenders of this generation. So Rio Ferdinand of the previous generation is also one of my favorite defenders. I like that sort of defender. Focuses more on their ability to read the game rather than just being, aggressive and getting into tussles all the time. Somebody who's not venturing off their line a lot and is rather just waiting to see what the opposition does first, then react.
Very good shout. I like it. I can see Rio Ferdinand in a five-a-side team. Andrew, where are you going?
I'm going to go, Rio's partner. I'm going to go Nemanja Vidic. So that's who I'm going to go as my defender.
I can understand that. I'm working on the theory that your idea is that anyone who gets past the midfield and sees Nemanja Vidic instantly soils themselves and misses.
Basically, they just run into it and they don't get past. Vidic, just puts his body on the line for everything. So no nonsense. He gets stuck in. So no one's going to get past him. Well, if you get past him, then you got to get past the Great Dane afterwards and Peter Schmeichel. Indeed,
yes. So Dan, you're going to shock us a few times, so I'm presuming you're going William Prunier.
No, Harry White. No, I'm joking. I feel like you've got to have a centre back, but I don't. I've not gone for a centre back, if that makes sense. Because you're picking five-a-side, I've gone for Dennis Irwin.
Wow.
I don't really think I need to explain that. Dennis Irwin was just an absolute baller to the highest level.
I mean, it's hard to argue. Dennis Irwin is a legend. But I also agree with what you just said, which is that I think most people would think of a centre-back. But he was very, 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 I don't want to say controversial because that's the wrong word. What do I mean? When you use them in lots of places. Oh, it's gone. The word will come to me.
Versatile.
Versatile. Yes, Marcus. Half point to you. Yes, very versatile. He could go in a lot of different spaces. He was right and left-sided, so why not?
And he could take a penalty.
And he could take a penalty, yes. I've got to be honest. Initially, I thought it was possibly Vidic, but then equally, possibly the greatest defender that Manchester United have ever had, and certainly the one who I think had the most potential in Duncan Edwards. Because I like to bring things a bit different to the channel, I'm going to do that. So I think Duncan Edwards is going to be my defender because he was very good. Very good, and he would be good going forward as well as being at the back. So, in the interest of being a bit different as well, but I will say the other person I was thinking of was Nemanja Vidic. So, if I was doing it on a more modern one, Andrew would have won on that one for me. But there we go. Right, move over forward. Marcus, who would be the third person in your five-a-side team?
Okay, well, this one is pretty self-explanatory, but I would go for Paul Scholes. He's just brilliant on the ball, and he would be my midfielder for the team.
Got to be honest, that's a brilliant shout. I think anyone who's not choosing Paul Scholes better have a bloody good reason as to why they haven't. Andrew, are you picking Paul Scholes as well, or have you got a different person in mind?
I have a different person in mind. I'm going to go with Bruno Fernandes.
He's gone for Fernandes. The crowd's gone wild. You're going to have to explain it. Marcus has just gone for Paul Scholes, the person that Zinedine Zidane, as you well know, because you got the answer right in the quiz, said was one of the greatest midfielders he's ever played against. And you're sitting there going, Bruno Fernandes. Why? Why does he make it?
As I say, on certain players as with you, and this one's like, and what does it, do have more defenders or attackers? I just thought what Bruno's done in the last 4 years for the club. I just think he's dragged this, club kicking and screaming those players along. I think where would we have been without him at times? Because he's virtually played every single game. I think he's had one game. Couple of games missed because of suspension and one just for an injury. So he literally gave everything for United. And yes, people would argue, yes, he moans, he throws his hands up in the air and on the pitch, but he shows he's passionate and he wants the best out. Even that letter he wrote before the cup finals, like where we all thought, is he leaving us? But he was just writing to us to say, yeah, our season hasn't been the greatest, but I want the best for United. I want to stay here. I want the club matching my ambitions as well. So I'm like, yeah, and just seeing how he's played. Well, watching live at Old Trafford, I never got to see Scholes, play live at Old Trafford. But
no, but you had a telly.
Yes, I know I had a telly, but
in fairness to you, Beanie says can't we have Scholes and Bruno? That might be your second choice.
I've got flipping between a lot of players, and I'm just like, who do I could have put everybody in, but it's only 5 players.
It's very interesting, and it's an interesting shout. Dan, I've got to be honest, I went Scholes. He was definitely one of my top 5 players that would be in the five-a-side team. So I've written down David Beckham. I'm going to be amazed if this guy doesn't appear, but maybe going to leave him till the end. Who's your next player?
I'm going to go... I'm just going to keep it in sort of an order. I would go for Roy Keane next. Because I've not got a centre-back, and I've gone for Dennis Irwin. I feel like I need Roy Keane for a bit of power.
And to shout at Dennis Irwin when he's moved over to right or left back.
Exactly. Absolute captain.
And if you don't mind me saying so, a very Irish way that you've gone for there over on that Emerald Isle over there. Just sort of throwing over there to those fair isles. Very interesting. Okay. Well, said I'd have gone for Paul Scholes. Who is your fourth, your penultimate player, Marcus?
I'm going to go for Berbatov. Brilliant first touch, excellent technical player, also can score goals. So, he brings something to the team. I think Berbatov is an underrated striker for Man United. To be fair, we have a lot of great strikers, so there's a lot to pick from. But Berbatov, I think he's just got a magic first touch, and that's great in five-a-side because you need to be able to control the ball.
I agree. I think Berbatov was a great striker. Jarvis going for Onana in goal. That has surprised me. Martinez, Mainu, Veron, and Zlatan would win every time at five-a-side. Well, until you play my side, absolutely. He's gone for subs, which wasn't there, Scholes and Berbatov. So he's obviously agreeing that Berbatov is up there. Andrew, where would you go?
I'm going to go for the king, Eric Cantona. Yeah,
I'm not going to lie, Andrew. You don't need to explain that. I mean, you can go on if you want to, for the benefit of your
in the five-a-side, he was my first name on the list. He was always, he's my football idol. So,
There's no United fan who's sitting there going, "What? Eric Cantona? Fool. Not happening." Completely agree. Dan, who's your fourth name?
Paul Scholes.
He's gone Paul Scholes. Unbelievable. David Beckham's not going to make his side. This has absolutely blown my mind when I consider the toys that he threw out of the Prem. The all-time 11.
I've just gone for I'm trying to win, so I've gone for balance. So I feel like if you've got Keane and Irwin, you need a Scholes. I need some creativity in there as well as excellence.
So you're saying David Beckham wasn't creative? I'm just putting that there.
I don't need a wide man crossing the ball in at 5-a-side. That's my problem.
I agree with you. We do need creativity. That's why I've gone for simply the best. Mr. George Best. Are you playing 5-a-side? I'm telling you now, that guy's just going to wander around everybody. He'd probably beat the team by himself. So Scholes and Edwards would be sat there having a cup of tea and a biscuit. It'd be fabulous. So there we go. I don't think any other person could fill that particular role. Who's your fifth and final person, Marcus?
This one was tough. I'm not going to lie, but I have to go with CR7. I think he'd complete the team for me. I don't even know if I have to explain that one, but I just feel like he completes the team. But there's a lot of great options. There's so many great players we have to choose from.
You're gonna have to repeat the name because I missed it entirely. You went sort of.
Ronaldo.
Ronaldo. Thank you very much. And thank you for clarifying that it wasn't the bald Brazilian as well. That's very helpful. Thank you. But yes, absolutely. He's up there with Cantona. You don't really need to explain that. Andrew, are you about to say Paul Scholes?
No.
Oh my God. Go on then. Where are you going?
I'm going to go George Best. It's the
Ooh.
final. So him and Cantona. So that was a quote George Best once said. He said, "I'd give up all the champagne in the world to play at Old Trafford on a European night with him." I just think what George Best did for a skillful player. He could play on the wing through the middle, just like and the goals he scored, and just like what he did for us. I just thought that combination of Cantona and Best is just like, God, imagine them playing today. You'd be like, just like magic on the pitch. So George Best for me is my final choice.
That would be quite something. And I'm a big fan of the fact that you left that one till the end there, just sort of pulled it out like, who's Paul Scholes? And you got George Best. Very nicely done. But imagine Best and Scholes in the same team, Andrew. Just wonder what that might do. But there we go. Something very interesting has happened. They seem to have just stopped on the Italy-Albania game. I'm not entirely sure why. It's just for a sub. That's fine. I was wondering if there was naughty people running on the pitch. Dan, who is your last player? You've got De Gea, you've got Irwin, you've got Keane, you've got Scholes. David Beckham, right?
Wayne Rooney.
Oh my God.
Oh, so I was about to ask, is Wayne Rooney going to make it in? That's a good shot. I
had no choice. He's all round
really
forward.
And I'm not saying, oh my God, that you said Wayne Rooney. Fantastic choice. I've noted this for the next time you start trying to tell me how brilliant David Beckham is. He didn't even make the 5-a-side team. Just so you know that.
Be on the bench.
Okay, fair enough. I've got to be honest, I'm struggling a little bit here because in my head I've got three strikers. And those three people are Eric Cantona, Wayne Rooney, and Ruud van Nistelrooy. And I think where we go here is we're looking at who's going to be the best at 5-a-side. And I think Ruud van Nistelrooy is better with an 18-yard box to play in. So you're looking at your Rooneys and your Cantonas, and I can't go anywhere other than the King. I've got to go for Eric. So there we go. Done. So we have my team, Schmeichel, Edwards, Scholes, Best, and Cantona. Andrew's gone for Schmeichel, Vidic, Fernandes, Best, and Cantona. Marcus has gone for Van der Sar, Ferdinand, Scholes, Ronaldo, and Dimitar Berbatov. And Dan has gone for David De Gea, Dennis Irwin, Roy Keane, Paul Scholes, and Wayne Rooney. I tell you what, if they were in a little 5-a-side tournament, that'd be very interesting. I mean, it'd also be very interesting because Scholes is playing for three of the teams at the same time, which would make it a bit difficult. But hey, you can do it on FIFA, so maybe that would work. So there we go. And with that, boys, we're there. The game's almost over. It's nearly the end. Italy 2, Albania 1. So it looks as if they are going to win the game. And that will be Group A and B done. England playing tomorrow. Should we have a quick scoreline prediction? England against Serbia. We know Nemanja Vidic has been on the Man United app and told everyone what he thinks is going to happen. I say tell everyone, I didn't listen to it, so I don't know what he actually said, but I presume he said England are going to win. Marcus, what do you reckon? What's your score?
England should win that game. I think they'll win it 2-1. I don't expect England to blow them away because, England are England. But I think 2-1. They'll do it the hard way, though. It will be a close game.
Fair play. Mr. Wool.
I'm going to go 3-1 England. Serbia will make it tough, but I think we'll get over the line in the end, hopefully.
Very nice. And Dan?
I'm going to go for 2-1 as well. I think we'll win 2-1, but it won't be overly comfortable. And can I just say as well, I've completely changed my mind about this extra time thing. I'm already fed up of seeing teams time waste for 10, 15 minutes and only 4 minutes being added. It's absolutely infuriating. Like, I get if he was going to take it away and do the 5 minutes, if they're going to actually start booking players. But some of these games for the last 15 minutes have been awful because of the time wasting. They just bring it back. Give me the 10, 11 minutes again. Like, I can't watch it.
People always just have a go and they forget what it was like beforehand. We're going to let Jarvis finish the show. He's gone for his worst Man United five-a-side. He's put Taibbi in goal. I think I'll probably go with that. Prunier, who of course was the worst defender to ever put on a Manchester United shirt, and how he hoodwinked Sir Alex, I'll never know. Bebe, it wasn't great. Jemba, I liked Jemba. I don't know if it was just the name and the fact that he was so good they named him, but I liked him. I did. And I felt bad for Jemba. So I'd throw in
Falcao's got to be there, no?
Tom Cleverley I'd put there instead of Jemba. I thought he was the worst player that ever pulled on a Man United shirt. And Kleberson, yeah, interesting. I don't know. Yeah. I think
I'd put Falcao into this team. I think Falcao gets into this team.
Falcao.
Awful. Yeah, listen, Falcao outside of Man United was great. Don't crucify me. But Falcao in a United shirt was terrible.
Yes, well, this is again us getting people who are past their primes. Zlatan just about managed to buck that particular trend, but there we go. It's over in Berlin or whatever part of Germany they've decided to have that football match. But I think it was Berlin. Italy 2, Albania 1. So there we go. It's time to end. It's been beautiful. Marcus, so good to have you back on the show. Where can people find you if they wanted to get a little bit more Marcus in their life?
I am at Triple M on Twitter and on TikTok and on YouTube. So you can find me talking a lot of nonsense about football on those platforms. I'm a little bit more serious on my YouTube channel, though. And yeah, it was a pleasure to be back.
Absolutely. I'm never serious on this YouTube channel. I find it very difficult. If I was too serious on this YouTube channel, I'd probably only last a show and then I'd have to give up. So there we go. But absolutely go and check his content out. It is worth watching. Andrew, again, lovely to have you on. And Dan, cheers for coming. We're going to be back on Wednesday, we think, because that will be a point where all of the group games will have been played for the first round of games. So have a little bit of a Euro reflection, see how it's gone, check our tables, see if it's looking good. I can tell you already it's not looking great if your name is Dan, because Hungary are not going to be topping Group A. But
they're not going to be qualified.
What a choice. And the worst thing is, the world saw me question you. Like, what are you doing? You still they've lost 1 in 18 up until today, and then they go and do that. So they've had my pants down. Bookies always win, Dan.
Yeah,
bookies always win. And on that, I wish you all a brilliant Father's Day tomorrow. Obviously, Father's Day is coming out, so happy Father's Day to you, Dan. I hope you have a lovely time. And to all the fathers out there, all the Manchester United dads, and those that aren't as well, to be fair, we wish you a very happy Father's Day. Have a superb day tomorrow. We'll see you midweek. Night all.